Hello, Professor Chen.
Hello.
Comparative literature is a heated subject in the field of literature, but for some new beginners, they sometimes will mistake this concept with comparing passages. Could you please tell us the difference between comparative literature and comparing passages?
Okay, that's quite different from each other. Comparative literature is a discipline. Nowadays in China, we have this subject, or some people call it discipline, as a comparative literature and world literature. Why comparative literature should be together with world literature? Because when the two professors, I think one is German, the other is Austrian, when they studied the subject of world literature, they were engaging themselves in comparative literature studies. And the term comparative literature actually studied, I should say when it is first used, it was in 1816. Although at that time the comparison was only between two national literatures, for instance, Chinese literature and American literature. And later, when it is connected closely with world literature, I mean, comparative literature should be concerned not only with two national literatures, that should be with many literatures from many nations. And the comparative or comparison actually means communications of different nations through the means of literature. That people reading novels, reading poems, reading drama, and they try to understand something foreign. They try to understand, for instance, the Chinese readers, when they were reading American literature, reading American novels, they try to understand American people, understand the American way of life, understand this so-called Americanism. And vice versa, when the American people reading Chinese poems from Tang and Song dynasty, they were not focused only on the poems themselves, but they tried to learn something about Chinese culture. So that's what comparative means, or comparison means. The comparison between two different passages, as you say just now, in my personal opinion, is not the so-called comparative study. You just compare a passage from Chinese novel and a passage from an English novel. You doing kind of a formal studies, but not concerned with what I said just now, culture or nationality or national character, something like that. So if you want to engage in comparative studies of literature, you have to gain a wide range of knowledge. You do not only read literatures, you have to read philosophies, you have to read something about culture, read something about psychology of the people. So that's a very complicated thing. It is a comparatively new discipline, new subject, as I said, but also required a great effort. Thank you.
Okay, so what do scholars of comparative literature do?
Scholars of a comparative literature usually do something very primary, that what we call as a parallel comparison. It's something like what you said, that you take two pieces of literature and put them together and then compare something here in the two works. Something, when we say compare, we mean there's a commonality, something common between two different cultures. And so it will be reflected into different kind of literatures. This is usually the primary or the first step that you do. But as you proceed in a deeper study of literatures, you not only compare two nations' culture or two nations' literature, you have to compare with something like international, or what we would use global, something global. Global means that you have a panoramic view of literature as a whole. Namely, that you have to do a sort of study of world literature, which include not only famous classics, not only literatures from the powers. Power mean the powerful states or powerful nations. You should also compare these literatures with literatures from minorities. It means minor nationalities, like literature from the Caribbean, or literature from Africa, or literature from India. Okay, those literatures written by authors that would reflect their own culture, which is comparatively not so powerful. But only in this way that you can include all cultures, all nations, and all ways of life together. And then you know the global communication of people, of different people, now through the means of literature. That's what should mean by the term comparative literature. And that's what the scholars in this field try to do.
Okay, so what is the significance of comparative literature?
Actually, I had said something about the significance of comparative literature and world literature. That is to know how the writers from different nations try to reflect their own culture in their own works. And through reading these kind of literatures, what I mean here, literature from minor nations or from major nations or from powerful nations, that's only for the kind of communication I said just now. But there's something else maybe, especially for the present situation that we are in the age of globalization. And that means that everything seems to be globalized, not only in the field of economy, not only in the field of, let's say, politics or some other fields, but also in culture. Nowadays, we have the American Hollywood films. The movies from Hollywood are quite enjoyed by the Chinese people, especially the young. And that is a signal in saying that some other culture would invade the Chinese culture. But that's, for some people, would be something fearful, something terrible. But for me, I think that would be something quite interesting and maybe beneficial to the development of Chinese culture. And literature, in this sense, is not certain nations. It is not a product. It could be a product of certain nation, but when we consider the kind of significance or function of literature, it's not national. It is international, because it could benefit to other people to learn lessons through literature from other people. That would be significance of comparative literature.
Okay, and there is a consistent misunderstanding about English majors. It is said that English majors in China are trained solely for language skills. And the title of the English department of Tsinghua University is the Department of Foreign Languages and Literatures. So what is the meaning of this name, and what are the expectations for English majors in this department?
Okay, the title now of the Department of Foreign Languages and Literatures of Tsinghua University is actually set by some forerunners of Tsinghua University in 1926 when this department was established. The basic intention of establishing this department simply is to carry out certain kind of ideals that are set by May the 4th movement, especially scholars and writers like Lu Xun, that they try to introduce some foreign, let's say, science, not only literature, not only culture, but science and technology into China. And this is the way they consider to be a way of improving Chinese nationality or Chinese national character, because they considered Chinese nationality at that time was very backward. So they tried to learn from foreign countries. And nowadays we had actually very vicissitudes of the name or the title of this department, because the department had changed over the years. Only, I think 5 years ago that we changed it back. And this set a new mission for the teachers and students here in this department. Not only to learn some foreign languages as a skills. In that case, we are the tools. But actually, any foreign language and literature is not a tool. It's just like Chinese literature and Chinese language. It is a discipline, it is a subject from which we can actually master and gain a better knowledge of the cultures that are concerned with the languages. Presently, we have only 2 majors here in this department. That means 2 languages and 2 literatures. One is Japanese, the other is English. And English would include not only British language and literature, but also American, Australian, Canadian, and New Zealand. Okay, that's my personal opinion should also include something English as is spoken by the Indian people, by some African people, even some Caribbean writers that they would write in English. So to know these people and to know their culture, learning language as a skill, that would only the first step. But if you want to go further and gain a deeper understanding, what I mean understanding in depth, then you have to read their literature, to read their history, and to know their philosophy. That means their way of life.
Well, hopefully someday we will achieve these goals.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.